Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Friday Night Zoom Boom meeting. I am your speaker tonight. I am Ken. I identify with Ken from the open road because I am a bicyclist, and that is a huge part of my identity and a huge part of my healing process. I am also an adult child, and I think the two identities go hand in hand with each other. I just want to thank everybody for inviting me back here again. Sometimes I question myself, is my story really worth hearing over and over again? And I hope to try to give you a different slant every time that I'm here. I think an important part of the ACA fellowship is having a sense of community. And community is really kind of what I want to talk about tonight as far as my journey. Kind of where I've been, what I did to build community, and kind of like what's working for me now in the program where I am with my recovery and my sense of community. The solution states that the healing begins when we risk moving out of isolation. And I think that is such an important message for all of us to hear. And I love that we say the solution at every meeting because certain things we just can't hear enough. So the healing begins when we risk moving out of isolation. I grew up very isolated. My background is I grew up in a bedroom suburb of Orange County, California in the 1960s. And I had very overprotective parents. If you ever watched the TV series All in the Family, my father was Archie Bunker and my mother was Edith Bunker. And because my parents were so overprotective, they didn't like me to go outside and play, so I really didn't get to socialize with many other kids. My older sister was probably the one that I socialized with the most. Looked up to her. She wasn't always necessarily the best role model. I think I became actually like afraid of kids and socializing because I was so not used to it. Something that I think was really devastating for me was when I was in first grade, I was in a combination class, and it was mostly second graders, and about half of us that were in first grade in that class repeated the grade. And for me to repeat a grade was devastating because the few friends I had were advancing to the next grade, and I was feeling like I was being left behind and having to redo a whole year of my life. And when you're 6 to 7 years old, a whole year of your life seems like a really, really big thing. The neighborhood was kind of tight. There were kids that I knew all through elementary school, kids that lived in the neighborhood. As far as like being a part of any particular group, that's not something that I really felt included in. And kind of like as an outsider, I watched other kids that maybe did Little League, or I had friends, neighborhood kids that were part of the Mormon church, and they were very into doing certain things in community, but I didn't really see much community around myself. And my parents didn't have very many friends, but the friends that they did have in the neighborhood were older couples that didn't have any kids. So if my parents had dinner parties or they would go over to somebody's house, there really wasn't anybody for me to associate with. So I grew up in a lot of isolation. One of the things that helped me start to socialize was from a really early age, like a lot of people, I wanted to be an actor. So I got very involved in community theater when I was in junior high school. This is, I think, where the bicycle was starting to get important because my parents didn't really like me to stray very far from home when I was a kid. If my neighborhood kids, if I was hanging out with them and they were riding to the local supermarket, that was too far, even though it was just around the corner, and I wasn't able to participate and go with them. But when I reached sixth grade, I think I was about 12 or so, my father trusted me to go for a bike ride one day with a friend, And it was very successful. And the next week I wanted to go again, and my friend didn't want to go. And I asked my dad, and my dad just said, well, look both ways before you cross the street. So I started to rely on my bicycle as my best friend. And when my parents saw that I was capable and responsible to take myself to like dentist appointments, orthodontist appointments, school on my bicycle, they kind of started to detach at that time. So the bicycle was something that got me to be involved with a lot of the community theater stuff. And with my socialization, I was learning how to socialize with adults and, having people-pleasing behaviors that really helped me to kind of gain an identity within the local community theater groups. I wasn't really doing acting. I was doing more backstage stuff. I was running the lighting panel, setting up the lights, doing sound, stage managing, doing all sorts of other stuff. And I was, like I said, able to communicate and felt more accepted by adults than I did with my own peers. And when I reached my junior year of high school, I pretty much was sleeping through most of my classes. I was still pulling B grades. I was working a full-time job at a local fast food restaurant, but I was tired and I would put my head down and I would tell the person next to me in class, wake me when the bell rings. At the end of my junior year, I had an option of taking a test to get out of high school early and start college. And I made it a point to take that test because for me, that was regaining what I lost with that 1 year that was taken away from me when I had to repeat first grade. So I was able to take the high school proficiency examination and pass it and then start attending the local community college. And even in college, I didn't really have too much of a sense of community. Looking back now, as I was, thinking about this speech, I was thinking, am I even connected with anybody that I knew in college? And I really didn't connect with that many people in my classes. Once again, I really didn't understand what community was all about. And I really was starving for a sense of community and a longing. And as I was getting disillusioned in college with the acting, I started doing a little bit more bicycling, and I ended up riding my bicycle from Los Angeles, California to Boston in 1985. And this is something that I never dreamed of doing. I had done a shorter trip down the coast by myself, once again alone, from San Francisco to Los Angeles a couple years before. And I did make some friends on the trip, some people that were cycling that I ended up cycling with, and started to realize that there was kind of a bicycling community, especially back in the 1980s. I used to go down to San Clemente State Beach. They had a specific campsite that was for bicyclists, people that rode their bikes in. And my bicycle was kind of my ticket out of the house. So I would ride down there for the weekend and camp out. And there were people that were other local people in Orange County that were camping there, that had ridden their bikes there for the weekend. And there were people from all over the world. One weekend, there was a gentleman from Canada who was cycling with a guitar strapped to the back of his bicycle. And he was heading to South America. And he asked me if I wanted to go with him. And, it seemed like a fun thing to do, but that was just definitely out of my comfort realm. A couple days later, somebody who I met on the San Francisco trip contacted me and said he was going to go to Florida, and he asked if I would be interested in riding with him a couple months down the line. And once again, that was out of my comfort realm. A couple days later, a friend from Chicago called me and said, hey, next summer, why don't we ride our bikes to Chicago? And 3 people in 1 week asking me to do something like that, I felt that there might have been a sign coming from my higher power. And I just said to him, if we're going to go to Chicago, well, let's go all the way. Let's go to Boston. So I got really excited. I made this commitment of being able to take I think I had 10 months to plan for this trip, try to get sponsors, see if anybody else wanted to ride along. It was a really exciting time for me. I still really didn't have much of a sense of community. I had two friends that I ended up starting to ride with, and one of my friends had some challenges, and she stopped riding in Idaho. And the friend that talked me into it, who lived in Chicago, wasn't happy the entire time. So that was energy that was really trying to bring me down, even though I was just so amazed at what I was doing. And one day, the two of us were cycling through South Dakota, and there was some storm clouds on the horizon. And my friend said, you know what, this doesn't look good. I think we need to stop at a farmhouse and seek shelter because we're not going to make it to the next town in time for the storm that's going to just break loose all over us. And I was mortified, asking for help in that way, knocking on someone's door and asking if we could pitch their tent in their yard somewhere. I thought for sure that they were going to come out with a shotgun. I waited at the road while my friend went down the driveway and knocked on the door. And what happened really blew me away. The hospitality that followed. The farmer and his wife came out and they said, it's good that you stopped here. There is a storm coming. There's tornado warnings. We have a machine shed that you can, camp in so you don't have to worry about setting your tent up in the rain or anything. They had already eaten dinner, but they invited us in for dessert. The next morning, they made this like 3-course breakfast for us. And when I was thinking that their attitude was going to be, gee, out of all the farms here, you had to pick ours. Their attitude was, wow, out of all the farms down the road, you picked ours. And it was really humbling. And I started to realize then that we can connect with other people, that I can connect with other people. I had such an amazing trip that I wanted to do a second one. And the next year, with a different group of friends, I set out to ride my bike cross country a second time. And my friends that committed didn't commit the whole time. On the first trip, my friend in Chicago, who was so miserable, he stopped in Chicago. So I continued on through Canada and then ended up in Boston on my own and had a wonderful time and had no problem at that point being by myself, knocking on farmhouse doors and asking to pitch my tent somewhere if I need to. Sometimes it was kind of comical. One of my goals is I want to learn how to milk a cow. And I saw a dairyman herding his cows across the street, and I rode my bike faster and I caught up with him, and I really wanted to do it. But instead of asking like, hey, can I watch you? Can I learn how to milk a cow? I was kind of timid, and I just said, hey, do you need some help milking your cow? And he kind of looked at me and said, no, I've been doing this for many, many years. But it all worked out good. I stayed and I watched. He told me that he didn't do it by hand. He had a huge herd and he was showing me how they do all the electric stuff. But anyway, it was another way that I was connecting. And between the first and second trip, I saw the movie Witness, which was about the Amish people, and I was fascinated by them. And I wanted to make that a part of my next trip. And through a series of events, I ended up meeting one New Order Church of the Brethren family and 3 Pennsylvania Dutch families. And I ended up staying with these people for several days, each family. And this was, I think, the beginning of where I learned to have a sense of community, because I was welcomed in, treated with respect. I was curious about them, and they were just as curious about me. 8 years later, when I graduated with my master's degree, I set off to do a third cross-country trip. And this time it was really important for me to reconnect with the people that I had met on the first 2 trips. So I actually went back to that first farm that we knocked on their door. And I had been in contact with the people, so it wasn't a surprise to them this time. But it was so neat to reconnect with these people afterwards. And when I reconnected with the 4 families on the East Coast, what they said to me was, wow, you've come back. And because you've come back, you are family now. And that was in 1994. I fly now, but I go back almost every December and I visit them because they are a part of my family. They're part of my family of choice. And I've learned so much about connection and community from them. Another thing that I've done for community is kayaking. It's been about 20 years now. No, it's been over 20 years, like 25 years now, that I created a kayaking group out of an outdoors club that I belong to. I guess around that time, for some reason, kayaking was something that was just starting to take off, and me being willing to lead some trips, I was able to get a really nice core group of people. And we had certain things that we would do every year. Going camping on Santa Cruz Island. We had floating potluck paddles every other Tuesday night during the summer. We had Christmas parades where we would go out at night at Christmas time to see all the colored lights in the boat parade, and we would dress up our own kayaks and put lights on them, and we would dress up as Santa Claus or soldiers or elves or whatever. And I created a nice community with that. Within the outdoors club that I belonged to, there were some like really heavy drinking groups. There were all sorts of different groups. And I was known as the leader that, just did some really low-key groups. I didn't allow anybody to get drunk. If they got drunk, I blacklisted them because I wanted a group of people that could interact with each other on a really nice personal level. While a lot of the people in the group came from different backgrounds, they were all really nice people. And the Outdoors Club kind of folded about 20 years ago, but I moved my group over to Facebook, and I'm still in contact with a lot of the people. They don't all kayak anymore, but I have other non-kayaking events that I touch base with them every year. So that's kind of a way as an adult that I have built a community. And with the cycling, I've done, and I'll get to the ACA stuff in a second here. With the cycling, I belong to an international community of being hosted by people who are bicyclists. Well, let me skip ahead to the ACA stuff. And I know when I'm talking, there's a lot of people that have heard my story before. You guys are old timers. You've heard all this, but there's some new faces in here. And I also want the new people to hear, the importance of the core message that I have, which is, I think ACA is a huge foundation. For me, I'm lucky that going to school to be a therapist, I had a lot of therapy. I was in a lot of groups. I learned a lot. I was trained by some really good people. And the people that I work with are actually the people that I learned the most from. In 1988, my sister said to me, "Dad is an alcoholic, you're in denial, and you need to go to ACA." So in 1988, I grabbed a friend of mine because I said, your childhood was worse than mine, so if I have to go, you have to go too. And we walked into a meeting, and it was really scary for me. It was a lot of very unhappy, sad-looking people holding teddy bears, and they didn't really have much literature, and when it came time to start sharing, people would just cry. There was so much pain in the room, but not really a lot of recovery. And I was fairly young back then, and it kind of scared me. But I always heard a lot about ACA, and I did recommend a lot of my patients go. And in 2013, one of my patients asked me to speak at an ACA convention. He liked one of the things that I taught and thought it would be a really good adjunctive piece of ACA, and asked me to speak. And so I returned back to the meetings, not because I felt like I had hit bottom or it was a desperation. I returned back to the meetings because I wanted to know who I was speaking to. And I attended meetings for about a month, and what I noticed was certain things that would bother me in my life, I wasn't reacting to them the same way. I was realizing, wow, maybe I do need some more polishing. Maybe there are some things that I still need to learn. Maybe there's something to this. That was back in 2013, and I've been attending ever since. And took a little bit of a while to get a sponsor and do the steps, but I've made it a point to really embellish the program. I've seen several people try the program several different ways, where people just go to meetings and treat it like a social event. Some people don't like meetings and they just read the literature. Some people do the workbooks on their own. Some people, link up with a sponsor. I've seen different ways of approaching the program, and I've seen different levels of success. And I think it's really important to think about making a commitment, whether it be a commitment to being of service at your meeting, being a commitment to yourself to finish what you start, whether it be the steps of the Loving Parent Guidebook, making a commitment to try to be a part of a greater community. One of the things that I've always tried to do with ACA, with my meetings, is if there was no sense of community within the meetings, just start asking people if they wanted to go out for, whether it be a cup of coffee, a hamburger, whatever, local, burger joint, hey, who wants to go out and have fellowship afterwards? At meetings, that isn't the norm, where people kind of scurry in, do the meeting, and then scurry out. That might be something that might be kind of odd. And I know in my first meeting, one of the meetings did fellowship and one of the meetings didn't. And the meeting that didn't do fellowship, every time I would announce it, people would be really skittish. But I held tight and I kept announcing it every week. And after a while, I had people that would be joining me and starting to embellish fellowship. And I can say that I have friends in the program that I've known almost from the beginning. I've seen a lot of people come and go. I see a lot of people that, for whatever reason, don't follow through with the commitment. The solution also says we go from a place of hurting to a place of healing to a place of helping. And I see so many people that don't really know how to pace themselves in recovery. And as soon as they get into that healing process, it gets to be too much, or life gets to be too much, and they just can't work on themselves, and they go back into the hurting and back into the denial. And I know it's hard. I'm dealing with a lot of stressors right now in my life. I just came back from basically a 4-week vacation. I know, why am I complaining about stress? I just came back from a vacation. But I have a lot going on in my life right now. There's a lot of pressing demands and responsibilities that I have, and the timing for the vacation necessarily wasn't all that good. I have to be kind to myself. I have to be gentle on myself, and that's why I decided, with responsibilities, that I did need to take care of myself and take the vacation. But coming back, it's been hard. But I don't want to lose focus. I want to stay focused on my continued recovery. I want to stay focused on being my own loving parent. I want to be able to express my needs and, not be so hard on myself, and, looking at the bigger picture of knowing that even though I have a lot of stressors and responsibilities, that, having faith that things are all going to work out. And I know that if I am stressed, I have a lot of people that I could pick up the phone and I could call, I could reach out for support, because I have built that sense of community. I have a home meeting that I've been attending now for about 3 years. COVID kind of changed things, and when my previous home meetings kind of came back, they weren't really the same. So I found a different meeting, and it's a candlelight meeting. And if anybody's never tried an in-person candlelight meeting, they're really pretty cool. I've built fellowship there. I raise my hand and say, who wants to go to a restaurant afterwards and have some coffee, or just share some time. I've made some really good friends within the meeting, and I've actually, when I say friends, made friends that transcend just beyond the fellowship. And one of the things I like about the friends that I've made through ACA is most of them are sober, and they can talk about things that are genuine. So it's not like going out with people, friends, where everything is based on drinking or partying or being superficial. And I really like the sincerity of the people in the fellowship that I've made. I said I think it's important that we make a commitment when we start recovery. Here in my area, there's not a lot of sponsors, and it's really hard for people to find sponsors. I know a lot of people that have started STEP meetings and Loving Parent Guidebook meetings, and often they start out strong, but they don't always complete what they start. So it's my mission to create more sponsors, and I'm working with a lot of people here locally to get them to be at a place where they can sponsor and give back. I really think that the ACA community would benefit by having more sponsors. I don't know if anybody has read the new workbook, Connections. I got a copy of it right here. It talks a little bit about sponsorship, talks a lot about the fellow traveler model. I really stress the importance of having a sponsor because I think it's really important to have a mentor. And if you come from a different program where maybe you've had a sponsor before where they've been a little bit more authoritarian and telling you what to do, I really believe the ACA sponsor is somebody who understands what it's like to be a loving parent and can be that loving parent and help you to become your own loving parent in the process. One of the things I really liked about the Connections book is there's, I think it's chapter 5 and appendix D in the book, which talks about healthy boundaries. When you are working with somebody and you are looking for a sponsor, to be able to almost negotiate these boundaries and kind of have a contract so that you both know what the limits are, you know what to expect, there's no surprises, and you can move forward building the relationship there. I want to talk a little bit now, go back to the bicycling, since I've talked a little bit about my story and kind of about what I did on my vacation. And when I did my first cross-country bike tours, what I did was I looked at a map and I wanted to see all the places in the US that I wanted to see. As a kid, my parents would go on vacation and they would leave me with my grandmother, and I would get postcards from all these beautiful national parks. So when I planned my cross-country trips, I wanted to go and I wanted to see them for myself. So most of my trips have been to see things. And this last trip was different. I went to Europe and I was in Germany, Holland, and Belgium. And this trip was planned more to see people. This was a trip to revisit people that I have hosted here in the United States and that I have also already visited them. I like going new places. I like seeing new things. But for some reason, at this point in my life, I really wanted to reconnect with people that I really cherish. These are people that are extremely positive, happy people. The trip was amazing. It was just so nice reconnecting with these people and celebrating our friendship. And this shows that even, 5,000, 6,000 miles apart, we can still be really good friends. There's a couple in Germany that I visited. They've been here to the US twice and stayed with me, and I've been to see them 4 years ago. There's just this nice sense of connection. As one of my patients like to remind me, the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think connection and fellowship are just really, really important. And I mentioned also the kayaking group that I did. Through Facebook and through kayaking, I have actually reconnected with a lot of my neighborhood cohorts, people that I really wasn't necessarily close to as friends growing up, but, had them in class, played with them on the playground, knew who they were. With a few of them, I've reconnected, and they're actually part of my inner circle now and part of my community. And for me, that was really healing because I never wanted to go back and revisit anything from my childhood. One of the girls in the group talked me into going back to one of my high school reunions a few years ago, and that was something that I never wanted to do. I never really wanted to revisit the pain of that part of my life. And I went, and it was so interesting seeing things through the eyes of an adult. And I could see kind of as an adult how we all fit into the different pieces of the puzzle much differently. And I think I was actually able to look back. It wasn't the first time I went to a reunion. I think the second reunion I went to was right after the Loving Parent Guidebook came out and I had worked through the workbook. I actually, as I was working through the workbook, was able to understand my inner child and have so much more love and respect for him instead of just kind of, feeling uncomfortable sitting with him. So the Loving Parent Guidebook is another really good route to go for the healing process. So just today, being able to be close with these people. One of the girls, she's dealing with bipolar disorder. And when I've done some speaking events locally, she's been a part of the speaking. We've kind of gone as a team. And I think that's about it for what I want to talk about today. My reframe was if I can't go 45 minutes, that gives you guys more time to have your own voice and your own shares. I would like to say if there is a topic, just basically anything about community, whether, how are you creating community? Do you need community? Are you afraid of community? Have you been hurt by community? But just the importance of community. And if anybody in their shares would like to refer to my share, I'm cool with that. And I'm cool if anybody wants to send me any private chats in the chat as well. I think this presentation, I've been a little bit more scattered because of all the stress that's been going on in my life. So I haven't been able to kind of hone in on this stuff as much as I would normally do that. But I do see so many new faces in here, and I'm really excited about that. So if you're new to ACA, I hope you can walk away with something that I said and would be helpful for you. I'm Ken, and thank you so much for letting me share.